Hello and welcome back to 68 Cups of Blueberry Tea. Today we are joined by Ed Willis, author of World War II in East Timor, an Australian Army site and travel guide. This book is an incredible comprehensive look at the 1942 guerrilla campaign by Australia's Sparrow Force, the Allied detachment of Dutch, British, US and Australian troops formed to defend the island of Timor from invasion by the Empire of Japan. This part of our history you might have heard of, but like myself, not quite understand. So let's learn together. Ed, thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure.
Let's start off with the personal spark. Your interest in the Timor campaign started quite close to home with your father, Bill Willis, who was a signaller in the 2nd by 2nd. You've mentioned that he wasn't exactly an avid Anzac Day attendee and only shared a few self-deprecating stories from his time serving. What was the specific moment or detail that turned those few anecdotes into what has become a dedication to this history and this country?
I suppose it really became a prime interest after I retired from full-time work. That was back in about 2004, when I had more time then to devote to following up those stories and anecdotes that Dad had told me. And it sort of developed a bit slowly, and finally I was in a position to first visit Timor in 2008.
Mm-hmm. And well, can you explain, so what is the 2nd by 2nd and what was the role of a signaller?
Right. Well, the 2nd, they originated in 1941. The idea of forming what was then called an independent company, but later became better known as a commando company, came from the British. And they sowed the idea with the Australian Army, and they decided to establish a number of independent companies. They're called independent companies because they were able to operate independently of a larger force, often behind enemy lines or closely associated with, but on the flanks of a larger Allied force. So they were only about 300 men, but they had all the components of a larger army unit. So they had stores, a medical section, an engineers section, and the signal section, of which my dad was a part of. So the signallers, they were trained to use radios, primarily using Morse code, which is a manual method of transmission, but they did use voice radio as well.
Okay, fantastic. So your father did pass away in 1987 before you had a real chance to dive into these details with him. If you could take your current guidebook back in time and show it to him, which specific site or map do you think would have prompted the most from him?
Right, thinking about that. You got me on the spot there. There's several places mentioned in the book that he was associated with, like I mentioned the Three Spurs camp, which was the camp that the unit moved to first after they vacated Dili prior to the Japanese actually invading. He would have been up there with the signal section at that time. It's interesting. One of the challenges in doing the site survey was actually trying to locate the actual site of that camp. So I'm sure if I'd been able to talk to him, he said, "Oh, you silly idiot, this is exactly where it was." So that would have been really valuable to talk to him in that sort of context, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, from your work and your visiting Timor-Leste, you have developed a bit of a tour, right, to visit the various sites. Can you talk us through this tour?
Yeah, well, I, I first really generated the idea back in about 2018, and then I was working with another company called Timor Adventures, with a couple who ran it called Shirley and Dave Carls, and they were actually based in Dili at that time. Unfortunately, they had to wind up the business when COVID came along. It really destroyed the way they were doing things. But I I forget the circumstances exactly, but somehow I came in contact with Dave and Shirley, and we started developing the idea of a what we then called a commando campaign tour of Timor. And Dave in particular had a real interest in the topic as well. So with them, I worked out an itinerary of about 9 to 10 days, I think it was, and we marketed and promoted it. And for that first tour, we got quite a number of people coming along who had a second connection through a family member. Often they were the children of a man who had served on Timor with the second. And so that first tour in 2018 was successful, and we followed it up in 2019 with a similar group of people coming along. Interestingly, on that tour, we had the two daughters of the first officer commanding of the second Major Alex Spence. So it was a real thrill to have those two women along, who also had a great interest in following the footsteps of their father on Timor. Unfortunately, COVID killed off the idea of running the 2020 tour. But after that, again, struggling to remember the circumstances, I got involved with another firm called Mad Dog Adventures. I don't know whether you've heard of them. Have you
Yes.
all? Yeah.
Yes.
And excuse me, I've got a mental block about the names of the two young couple that run that. But they were primarily interested in not running a vehicle-based tour, but a trek. And so I worked with them on developing a route for a trek that we eventually set on a name for as the La Rendai trek. And that runs for about 8 or 9 days, from around the Bazartete area down to around Absabi. And we first, can you help me with the names of I'm sorry, I've just...
Yeah, for the Mad Dog.
Yeah, Sam and Liesl Maddock, of course. Yeah, but they'll be angry with me for getting their names. But yeah, so we first ran that in 2023, and with a small group. The main participants in that were members of the Australian Defence Force, members of the Defence Cooperation Team based in Dili with the Australian Embassy. So I'm too old and decrepit to actually walk myself, but I did tag along in the vehicle-based support team, and they've run it again in 2024 and 25, and they're going to run it again this year, and I think they're hoping to run it on 2 occasions this year.
Yes, I have
the
some
first one
friends who
around
are.
Anzac Day.
Yeah, I have some friends who are training to do La Rendai.
Oh, great. Yeah,
Yeah.
Lorendo,
Well,
of course, means no surrender in Tedham.
there we go. And you suggested the name for it, right?
Yeah, the Sam was wondering what to call it, and I thought that it was an appropriate name because the second were they refused to surrender to the Japanese when the Japanese demanded that they do surrender. And it also, I think, it resonates with the Timorese themselves because they never surrendered in their resistance to the Indonesian occupation between 1975 and 1999.
So, how many of the sites listed in your book did you personally track or verify back when it all began? Were there any locations that were legendary in the records but proved nearly impossible to find on the ground today?
Um, they can be found, but accessing them is a real issue because of the terrain and the lack of roads to get in there. Often you have to go off road and follow a very rough vehicle track, or there's no vehicle track at all. So that would mean actually walking or perhaps going on a motorbike to try and access them. And as you know, motorbikes are a very popular mode of transport in Timor. Certainly, sites more in the central mountainous area of the country, I found it difficult to get to. Just trying to, like Alalik, Fatakuak, Fatamaquerc, Mendello. There, yeah, as I say, accessibility was a main barrier to trying to get in there and actually investigate the sites on the ground.
One of the points that you make in your book is the story of Winnie the War Winner. Can you talk us through that one?
Yeah, that's an amazing story. In the early stages of the campaign after the Japanese invaded, the unit didn't have any contact with Australia by radio. The radios that they still had in their possession didn't have the range to actually reach Darwin, which was the closest Australian base to Timor. So members of the signal section, led by a bloke called, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble remembering names again. It'll probably pop back into my head. But he was he worked for what was then called the PMG, the Postmaster General's Department, as a technician based in Hobart. And he was assigned to actually try and build a radio that would have the capability of reaching Australia. So they got together a range of different pieces of radio equipment, some of it actually captured from under the noses of the Japanese, and brought to a town in the southwest of Timor called Mape. I don't know whether you're familiar with that one, Gabriel, but it's a high place down towards the south coast near Suai, down in that area. And so this technician was based there with a number of other signallers, and they pieced together a radio set that was powered by pedal power. And I think they used local Timorese to actually pedal to generate enough power to generate a signal that could reach Australia. And it wasn't voice contact; it was by Morse code. And this was around late April in 1942 that they managed to do that. And their initial signal was picked up by a signals base just south of Darwin. And at first, the signallers in Australia were a bit suspicious that it might be a Japanese trick, but they asked some personal questions of the second men transmitting, like the name of a particular soldier's wife and where they lived, and that when they gave the right answers, that verified that they said who they said they were. So once they established radio contact, the Australian NOR force based in Darwin started to organise supply of the second by aeroplane and by ship, and sending them weapons, medical supplies, food, and money. Money was important because silver coins, so they could pay the Timorese who were helping them. And once they had that sort of support, they began to wage a really successful guerrilla campaign against the occupying Japanese.
Yeah. So obviously from your research you realise how important this campaign was in Timor-Leste. But you have also mentioned that perhaps the Timor campaign is surprisingly little known compared to the iconic status of Kokoda, for example. Why do you think that the Battle for Australia narrative has focused so heavily on the New Guinea side while leaving the year-long guerrilla campaign in Timor on the margins?
Well, the New Guinea campaigns, of course, were on a much larger scale than that in Timor. And I think because of the subsequent promotion and publicity of it post-war, the image of Paul Keating kneeling down and kissing the ground at Kokoda, I don't know whether you remember that. Those sort of images really enforced the importance and significance of Kokoda and the whole New Guinea campaign in what has become known as the Battle for Australia. The campaign in Timor went on. It overlapped to a great extent. Was on a much smaller scale in terms of the number of personnel involved, particularly from the Australian Allied side. The second was there throughout 1942, reinforced by another independent company, the Second Fourth, in November, December. And of course, it's often forgotten that there was a Dutch component to the guerrilla effort as well. So that there were about 200 or 300 Dutch soldiers who were there fighting alongside the Australians as well. But in total, probably the Australian forces involved during 1942 was only about 1,000 to 1,200 at the most, compared to the divisional size forces fighting against equivalent Japanese forces in New Guinea. You're talking about 30,000, 40,000 troops in New Guinea compared to that small number in Timor.
Mm-hmm. In amongst all the research that you did, so there would have been records from the Dutch side, from the Timorese side, from the Australian side. How were you able to bring it all together? There must have been different understandings of the role of each different party. So how were you able to bring it all together?
It's a difficult task because, I have referred to the Dutch, and it wasn't well. By and large, the Australians and the Dutch got on well together, but there was some jealousy, if you want to term it that, between the two, and the Dutch sometimes feel that their role in the campaign isn't adequately recognised. But I think everybody who was involved in Timor campaign does reserve commendation and recognition for the effort that they made. It's got to remember that, especially in that first half of 1942, our troops fighting in Timor were the only ones that didn't surrender. They were the only ones putting up fighting on the ground to resist the Japanese, and I think that in itself deserves greater recognition than it has been given.
Well, I believe that the second men were famously called the men who came out of the ground. To what extent was that invisibility and survival dependent on the Timorese Criados, the young boys who acted as the eyes and ears for the commandos?
The support of the Criados and the wider Timorese population was essential to the survival of the second during their campaign. The men acknowledged they just wouldn't have survived without that immediate support. The Criados were young men, often 8, 9, 10 years of age, that attached themselves to individual second and second force soldiers as, well, I don't want to use the word servant, but more a companion and support. They carried their weapons, their equipment. They scouted for them. They provided intelligence and feedback, and actually went into battle with the men as well, often carrying their weapons after the action had finished. So their bravery and support was vital. And the individual men established a great personal friendship with those individual Timorese. And it was a very sad occasion for them down on the southern beach when they were evacuated from back to Australia in late December 1942, when they had to leave their companions, their Criados, on the beach. But it wasn't just the Criados; it was the Timorese villagers who provided accommodation, food, and real friendship to them while they were fighting, and often suffered very terribly after the Australians left by retaliation from the Japanese.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. And the proceeds from the book that you have published, they go towards various projects here in Timor-Leste, right?
Yes, that's correct. The main cost of the book is to cover the cost of producing it, but yeah, there is a small remaining bit that is used by the Second Commando Association to fund projects in Timor-Leste. For example, one project that's in train at the moment is building a new school, primary school at Dare, that's in the final stages of completion. And another project we supported last year was a water purification and supply project for a technical college in Las Palmas. And
fantastic.
Over the last 10 years or so, we've funded several other projects in various parts of the country as well.
That's amazing. And so, for people who would be interested in undertaking one of these tours, what would be one of the most standout moments in terms of maybe having an understanding of the history, the relationship between Australia and Timor-Leste? Is there a particular site that does really drive that?
One of the sites that we do include in the tour is up at Bazartete, which is inland from Apello, the Apello fort on the
Not,
foreshore.
not yet.
It's heading out towards the Kisa. But you go inland
Oh,
up into the high country.
okay. A friend of mine, yes, he rides his bike out there and he's a big fan. He really appreciates the site there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, Bazartete is a small village in the high country, and the Australians were based there in March 1942, and they had what was called an observation post looking back over Dili, and they. The Aussies had the temerity to mount an ambush on the Japanese on the coastal road down near Apello around that time. And that really irritated the Japanese, who thought, okay, let's go up there and sort these Australians up at Bazartete out. So they mounted an assault going up into the hill and attacking the Australians at Bazartete. And you've got to remember that the troops that the Australians were facing there were no slouches. They were members of what was the 228th Regiment. They were they were veterans of the Battle of Hong Kong and Ambon. So they were very experienced battle-hardened soldiers. So there's a section of Australians, about 20 or so men, fought a pitched battle against the Japanese up at Bazartete. The Japanese did manage to get pretty close, and they killed 2 Australians and badly wounded at least 2 others. One of the men, called his surname was Hollow, had his jaw shot away by one of the Japanese who managed to get a little bit behind them. But the Australians managed to repel the Japanese assault and escape, carrying the wounded soldier Hollow with them. So we take the tour group up there, and we can actually visit on the ground where the Japanese assault occurred, and where the 2 Australian men who were killed were buried. And so that's quite a moving occasion. And there's a local gentleman up there whose father was a Criado, and he guides us around the site and shows us where the particular events happened. So
Wonderful.
That's a great experience for people who come along.
Yeah. And when is the next tour scheduled for?
If everything goes to plan, working with Alex and Anas of Timor and Earth, we're hoping that it'll run, I think it's from about August the 14th through to about the 26th of August.
Hmm. And that's touring the region, not just Dili?
Yeah, we'd be going out of Dili and heading first touring sites around Dili, including going up to Dara and Remexia, and then heading around the coast to Batagade and then up to Balabo, then moving through Balabo, Bobonaro, and down to Suai, then along the south coast to Same, Anaro and Aliu, and back up into Dili. So doing a sort of circuit of the western and central areas, and that's essentially where most of the fighting during the Timor campaign took place, and visiting quite a number of World War II related sites along the way in those places.
Wonderful. Well, hopefully it all goes ahead, and there are many people who are interested to join and to be learning more.
Oh, let's hope so. And I think Alex is really hoping, if we do make this a success, that there will be succeeding tours in following years as well.
Wonderful. And you will be leading that, right? With Alex?
That's what I hope to do, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, aside from that, for you, looking ahead, despite the chances of this tour going well and more down the train, are there any other areas of history that would take you down a different path?
I think the story of the Timorese people's struggle for survival and to establish their independence and to create and run a very successful democracy is an amazing achievement. The struggle they had during their independence war from 1975 to 1999 is a remarkable story in itself. And of course, Several of the current leaders, Ramos Horta and Zananas Gusmao, are intimately related to it. They're both around my age, so their time as leaders of their country is probably in its latter stages. But it's interesting that both of them too had family connections with World War II, and they fondly recall those events as well. Yeah, so I think that independence struggle is something that should be recalled and remembered as well.
Yeah. Well, my historian uncle, who I have podcasted with also, his wife joked that he had an obsession with cemeteries. And so, would you say you have an obsession with Timor-Leste?
Oh, my wife certainly thinks so. Probably got some obsession, but um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's well. I hope the work that I have done is valuable and is useful to other people who want to follow it up.
Yeah. Well, just an offhand question. Are you making use of any AI tools in your research? And as an historian, what does AI hold in terms of aiding historians in their research?
Yeah, I've only recently sort of dabbled with it, and by uh, doing some sort of keyword inquiries and seeing what comes up. Uh, in some instances, it has brought up some valuable uh, information that I hadn't stumbled across before. But I have noticed when you look at what the information that they actually provide, it's not right on spot of what you're after, and sometimes it's inaccurate. So I don't think anybody doing professional history should rely solely on AI to do their work. I think it certainly can lead you to information sources that are worth following up. But I don't think you should just transcribe and take on value as authoritative much of the information you can retrieve using AI.
Fantastic. That's really insightful and good to know that we still need to be interrogating data that is provided to us by AI.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to leave it there, and well, I'm looking forward to seeing you here in August for the tour. I will include a link to your book, and we will make sure that we can reinvigorate people's interest in the history of Timor-Leste, and make sure to be checking out the historical tours available at Timor Unearthed.
And
Cool.
Mad Dog Adventures too.
And Mad Dog Adventures.
That would be great if you could do that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, thank you very much for your time. I will see you in a few months.
Thanks, Gabrielle. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Bye for now.
Bye.